Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and although Celtic didn't have any midweek fixtures to talk about, just like that, it's time to go into our next match. I feel like the week has flown in, but tomorrow Celtic head to Fir Park. We take on 4th placed side Motherwell, and which is going to be a difficult game. So yeah, let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about that. If you haven't already, please make sure to go down below, hit like, hit subscribe. It's absolutely free. We're trying to get as close as we can to that 50,000 subscriber mark. So thank you if you've already subscribed, but keep doing it if you haven't. And it's good to talk about the real thing. I've been enjoying that FC24 career mode that we've started, but it's all about the real Celtic, not the virtual Celtic. This is the bread and butter. I'm glad to be talking about the real thing again. So we've actually got a few things to talk about today before we head in to that match preview segment of the video. We've got a couple of updates from Brendan Rodgers. We've got some news on a potential new contract as well. So we've got a few things to tick off the checklist before we get started. But another tough game tomorrow for Celtic. We head to Fir Park to take on a flying Motherwell, a side who are in good form to start this Scottish Premiership campaign, currently sitting 4th in the Premiership table. A very up and down team, as we know, Motherwell. Sometimes they head into these campaigns thinking to yourself, they could get relegated. Sometimes you think they could be top 6. They're always up and down, but this season they're certainly on the up under Stuart Kettlewell. So, you know, it's another tough place to go. We've had a rough start to this campaign, but we've handled it really, really well. Our domestic form away from home has been good. If we put it into league games anyway, take away that trip to Rugby Park, let's forget about that. League games, we've had the toughest mix of games that you could ask for to start the season. Pittodrie, Ibrox, the Tony Macaroni, and now Motherwell when they're sitting 4th. Couldn't ask for a tougher trip on the road for those venues that we've been given. So yeah, hopefully we continue that good form tomorrow, but we'll come back to Motherwell in a couple of minutes' time. Matt OReilly. Yes, it's time to talk about the gorgeous Dane himself. Obviously, the other day we spoke about the rumours that Celtic are ready to give a new contract to Rio Hatate, and at the end of that video I said the next player that has to be given a contract, the player that needs to be joining those group of new contracted players, is Matt OReilly. Arguably our player of the year thus far. He has been absolutely brilliant for Brendan Rodgers. Someone who, according to Brendan Rodgers, we're very lucky still to have this season, but there has been talk that Matt OReilly is next on the list for a new contract at the club, and that is good news. So this was the article that Stephen McGowan published late last night. Celtic boss Rodgers wants a new deal for Matt OReilly, and the article goes on to say that Brendan Rodgers hopes to secure Matt OReilly a new and improved Celtic contract, following on from a summer which raised some questions about his Celtic future. Yesterday, Brendan Rodgers revealed to the media that there was some serious conversations about Matt OReilly's future between him and the player himself and the Celtic board as to whether or not he would move on towards the end of that summer transfer window. This was some of the comments Brendan Rodgers said. He said, "I didn't think we could afford to lose another starter, and the club were very supportive of that. They were great." He gave a big thank you to Michael Nicholson and the guys, as he called them, for an open and honest conversation about it, saying that he couldn't let Matt OReilly go. He didn't want to let Matt OReilly go, and he spoke to the player about that. So now we're at the point when you look at the very impressive start that Matt OReilly's had to the season, a new contract has to be one of those priorities. On the player himself, Brendan Rodgers also added these comments in regards to him potentially wanting to move on. Brendan Rodgers said, "I never got that feeling at all from Matt. He is investing his time in his development. He could have left here. But with the greatest respect, he could have earned significantly more money by leaving, but that's not everything for him. Matt knows that I'm investing in him to help him become better. He still knows he's got a bit to improve, and hopefully this part of the season is confirmation for him that I can still improve him." So that was Brendan Rodgers' very glowing comments about Matt OReilly, the player himself, and as we know, the fantastic start to this campaign he's had. He has, for me, been the most impressive player to watch develop under Brendan Rodgers' management, and you can tell that Matt O'Reilly is a player rejuvenated by the management of Brendan Rodgers. He's someone who I'd love to see us tie down to a longer deal and keep here for longer. You've got to be realistic. How long can you keep players of that talent around at the club? It's only a matter of time before bigger moves come calling, money comes calling, the Premier League comes calling. But Brendan Rodgers is definitely the guy that you want to be in charge of his development, and you can see the benefits being gained from that. So that's always good news. In regards to the contract situation, Brendan Rodgers went on to say this: if we can tie him down for longer, then all the better, of course. So I think that after we potentially hear about this Reo Hatate contract situation, then maybe Matt O'Reilly is going to be next, which would be fantastic news for Celtic in what has been a summer full of contract extensions for key players. Hopefully Matt O'Reilly continues his fantastic start to the season tomorrow. Of course, we've got a European game on Wednesday as well. We take on Lazio at Celtic Park. He's the kind of player you want to see rise to that stage, the Champions League stage, where we need these key players to step up and give us performances. So, yeah, he's doing everything right now in his power to deserve a new contract, and hopefully that's something that we hear about very, very soon. But that was the first piece of good news that we've had coming out of Celtic Park ahead of tomorrow's game. We also got a very brief update on Cameron Carter-Vickers and his injury status. He is close to a Celtic return. However, we will need to wait a little bit longer due to the international break. We would have liked him back. We would have loved to have seen him back for that game against Lazio on Wednesday night. However, it's not going to be then. The reports are suggesting that he will be back the game following the international break. That weekend we return. This was the comment from Brendan Rodgers in the press yesterday. Said, we've got Cameron Carter-Vickers who's coming back to rejoin the training group, but he won't be ready until after the international break, I would suspect. So it looks as though he's got to be back in training, which is good. However, match fitness, being ready for a game, not till after the international break. However, if you told me back when he first got injured that we'd miss him for the first 2 Champions League games, that's probably a lot better than what I initially suspected when that injury was first reported. So, yeah, some good news on the Cameron Carter-Vickers front. Only a couple more games without him. And on that note, Nat Phillips looks as though he'll be ready to return, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see what the lineup prediction is, but he could rejoin the Celtic side tomorrow after his recovery from injury. He was incredibly unlucky, obviously, coming into the team and then getting injured so soon, but he looks as though he could be back in time for tomorrow, which is good. Brendan Rodgers spoke about that also yesterday. He said hopefully he's back for the weekend. He's come in and rejoined the group. We just need to make sure with his ankle, but that looks a lot better. So that was on the exclusive Celtic TV interview on YouTube. So yeah, Nat Phillips looks like he's back. Cameron Carter-Vickers almost back. Matt O'Reilly potentially getting a contract. Good news all round. Which leads me on to tomorrow's game. Celtic heading to Fir Park. A tough game for us, but it's the same old story when it comes to Scottish Premiership football. Celtic should be and must be winning these games in order to win the league come the end of the season. And Motherwell, like every other team, is one we should be beating. Despite their fantastic start to the season, and I mean this with all due respect, Celtic should be beating them. It's as simple as that. And if we play anything like we did last week, then I'm convinced that we will leave Fir Park with all 3 points tomorrow. But that's going in realising that you can't be naive and you've got to set up properly. And I think that Motherwell are a team far more capable of punishing Celtic should we see anything like, I don't know, a red card tomorrow. We've had 3 red cards in our last 2 games. That trend needs to stop tomorrow. Motherwell have a far better side than Livingston, and they will make the game harder for Celtic with 10 men. You know, against Livingston, we changed, we developed, we done brilliantly to cope, and we looked like the team that had 11 men playing 10 men last weekend. But I don't think Motherwell are anything like that. So this, I don't even want to say discipline problem, because I don't believe there's a discipline problem at Celtic. Just the last 2 games have been rather bad for the red cards. That needs to stop tomorrow though. We can't afford to get any red cards. We obviously go into this game without Joe Hart. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Motherwell aren't the kind of team that you want to give any sort of advantage. So yeah, no red cards please, Celtic. their start to the season has been really, really good. Last week they were incredibly unfortunate to walk away with from Ibrox with nothing. If you listened into that game and the reaction from the Rangers fans, you'll know that Motherwell were probably deserving of at least a point at Ibrox last weekend. They went with no fear, as every team should go to Ibrox at the minute, but they went with no fear. They were unlucky to walk away with a 1-0 loss. Their only other loss, I think, in the league came to St Mirren, who are obviously flying in second place. Apart from that, they beat Hearts with 10 men. They beat Kilmarnock. They beat Hibs. They've had a good start to the season, and that's why they find themselves comfortably in the top half right now. So, yeah, they've got players around that side that can cause damage. The big thing is obviously we don't face the likes of Kevin Van Veen this time because he's now gone. He's no longer with Motherwell. So it's going to be interesting to see the differences in how they play moving forward and how that change of striker changes their football. But it's something that our defenders, no matter who starts the game tomorrow, should be able to deal with quite capably. And yeah, I'm excited for it. Now, one thing that we need to talk about very quickly before I get onto the lineup prediction, the game is not televised. A 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday, and it's not televised. Scotland is the only country in Europe's top 15 leagues, Scottish Premiership, the only league in the top 15 leagues in Europe that doesn't have a single game televised this weekend by its provider. For us, Sky Sports. Sky Sports is not broadcasting one Scottish Premiership game this weekend. That is an absolute farce. A joke, to say the least. And there's so many parties to blame. Sky Sports being one of them. The SFA being another. This television deal is going to keep us in the dark ages for a long, long time. And there's a whole conversation, a whole video in itself, because I don't sit here being naive thinking it's so easy for Celtic to go. It's not Celtic, for Scotland to go out and get a better TV deal, because it's not. If there was a better TV deal there, BT would have offered it years ago, and they didn't. So quite clearly it's not easy for us to go out and get a better TV deal. But for us to be going in to a weekend where there's a couple of big games and not one is televised, that is an absolute madness, and that needs to be sorted out. So good luck to everybody trying to get the game tomorrow. I believe it's on a pay-per-view service. You could pay for it if you want. I'll be watching it with a totally legal way of watching it. Yes, pay-per-view for me. But a joke. Right, let's do my starting 11 predictions very quickly then, because I've went on a bit in this video, haven't I? In goals, it can't be Joe Hart. Will it be Scott Bain? Will it be Benji Siegrist? Will we finally see Siegrist? Who knows? No, I'm going to go Scott Bain. I just think that if Siegrist was going to be first choice, surely he'd be the one on the bench last week. You know? I don't know. It's a bit of a roulette for the goalkeeper tomorrow, but obviously Joe Hart out, so I'm putting Scott Bain in my team. Back four, I think, will remain unchanged from last weekend. There's no injuries. We've obviously got the potential of Nat Phillips coming back, but Lagerbielke and Scales have played well together. Also, Phillips is just coming back from this injury. Maybe he could be of better use on Wednesday. I'm going to go with the same back four. I think that Phillips could come on in the game, though, to get him back up to match fitness in preparation for Wednesday, so he's an option, but I'm going to go with an unchanged back four. Midfield three, will it be unchanged from last week? Will it be the holy trinity of midfield players? Yeah, it's got to be. Once again, got to prioritise match fitness and match readiness for Wednesday night, so I'm going to go for that three. I was tempted to maybe suggest that Hatate drops out so that we kind of protect him for that game on Wednesday, but he needs to play football. We've seen him against Feyenoord, he didn't look ready. He needs to be ready, so he needs to play. So I'm going for an unchanged midfield three. And for the front three, I am actually going to put a change in there, because I don't think James Forrest is going to start 2 games in a row. Obviously, he had to go off. He was unfortunate to go off, and I'm not saying anything bad about him, because last week he done nothing wrong. But I don't think he'll start 2 games in a row. I think that Luis Palma will come in this week and probably start on that right-hand side so that Maida can continue his form on the left. He was great last week. So Kyogo Maeda and Luis Palma is the front three I'm going for. Even though Luis Palma is a left-sided midfielder, he's a left winger, not a right winger. I just think that it's hard to drop Maeda at the minute, and I don't think Brendan Rodgers wants to drop him at the minute. So that's the team that I'm going with for tomorrow. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but hopefully I've got 11 out of 11. And join me tomorrow, an hour before kick-off, where we will go live for the lineup reaction stream. I'm going to make that a regular fixture on the channel this season. We've already done it for Feyenoord. Couldn't do it for Livingston because I was at the game, but I'm not going to the game tomorrow. So join me at 11:30 for that live stream. Score prediction then, I am going to go for 2-0 to Celtic. Another clean sheet would be great. We've got to keep the confidence flowing going into Wednesday, so hopefully a professional performance, one that avoids any scares. 2-0 seems to be a reasonable shout. Right, that does it. Wrap it up. I've spoke for ages. It's too long. Too long for a Friday. I'll see you on tomorrow. Cheerio.